You've seen this painting 1,000 times, right? It's probably one of the most famous images in all of American history. George Washington standing there so heroically, leading his men across a frozen river. It's this powerful symbol of American grit. But what if I told you almost none of it is true? So, that's the big question we're tackling today. Because the real story, well, it's way more chaotic, way more dramatic, and honestly, a lot more interesting than any painting could ever capture. We're gonna peel back the layers of this American legend and get to the truth of what really happened on that wild Christmas night in 1776. Okay, let's just break this famous image down real quick. First off, the boats. Those aren't little rowboats. Nope. They were using these huge 40 to 60 foot long Durham boats, heavy-duty cargo boats for hauling iron ore. And Washington's heroic pose in the middle of a raging blizzard on an icy river? No way. He would have been tossed right into the water. And that flag, that specific stars and stripes design, it wasn't even a thing for another year. So yeah, the painting is powerful, for sure, but it's more like a movie poster than a historical document.
To really get why Washington would risk everything on one frozen night, you have to understand just how close the American Revolution was to completely falling apart. I mean, the situation was beyond grim. It was catastrophic. Just look at this timeline. The fall of 1776 was just one crushing defeat after another. The Continental Army got chased out of New York, then hounded across all of New Jersey. This wasn't some organized strategic retreat. This was a full-on rout. They were beaten, demoralized, and literally running for their lives. And the army itself was just dissolving. We're talking about a few thousand men left, many of them in ragged uniforms, a lot of them without even shoes, leaving, bloody footprints in the snow. And here's the kicker. Most of their enlistments were set to expire at the end of the year. The entire revolution was literally just days away from blinking out of existence. So your army is melting away, the cause is all but lost. What do? Well, Washington comes up with a plan. But let's be crystal clear. This was not a stroke of strategic genius. This was an act of pure, unfiltered desperation. It was the Hail Mary pass of the entire war, and he was throwing it on Christmas night.
Now, the original plan was incredibly ambitious. The idea was to send 3 different forces across the river at 3 different spots to completely surround and trap the 1,500 Hessian mercenaries stationed in Trenton. The coordination required for something like that, especially for a battered army, it was just immense.
But then, of course, disaster struck. A massive winter storm, a full-blown nor'easter, slams into them. We're talking howling wind, driving sleet, the works. The river becomes this churning mess of ice. It's so bad that 2 of Washington's 3 attack columns, they have to turn back. They just can't cross. So that big, coordinated attack, gone. Now it's just Washington's single isolated force of 2,400 men. He had no other option. He had to push on alone. So now the entire fate of the revolution is resting on this one smaller column of soldiers against a battle-hardened enemy. And really, it all came down to the 2 men in command. And you couldn't have 2 more different leaders. On one side, you have Washington, desperate but resolute, leading what's left of his army. On the other side, the Hessian commander, Colonel Johann Rall. Now, Rall was an experienced soldier, but he thought the Americans were a complete joke. He'd beaten them before, and he was so overconfident he'd actually ignored orders from his own superiors to build defenses around Trenton.
I mean, this quote from Rall just says it all. When he was warned about a potential attack, his response was, "Let them come, we will go at them with the bayonet." That kind of arrogance, it was his own worst enemy. And the story gets even more unbelievable. On Christmas night, a local loyalist actually brings a note to Rall, warning him that the Americans were on their way. Rall, who was busy with Christmas parties and maybe a card game, didn't even bother to read it. He just stuffed it in his pocket. That unread note pretty much sealed his fate. So, against all odds, the storm, the plan falling apart, the enemy's pure overconfidence, what happened next didn't just win a battle, it changed the entire course of the American Revolution. So, after somehow crossing the river, Washington's men, many still without shoes, remember, marched 10 miles south through that driving snow and ice. They arrived at Trenton just after daybreak, hours behind schedule, but they still caught the Hessians in a total surprise. The garrison was either sleeping off their Christmas celebrations or just waking up.
And the result? Well, just look at this chart. It was a stunningly one-sided victory. The Hessians had about 1,000 casualties, with over 900 of them captured. And the Americans? Just 5 men were wounded in the actual fighting, though 2 tragically froze to death on the march. It was a complete and total rout.
So this is the really crucial point. The victory wasn't just about the numbers. It was about what the victory did. It was like a shot of adrenaline straight to the heart of a dying revolution. It gave the soldiers a reason to believe again, and many of them actually re-enlisted. They captured critical supplies, food, weapons, clothing, and it proved Washington was a leader who could actually win. In short, this one single desperate battle saved the American Revolution.
And it really leaves you with a powerful question. When absolutely everything was lost, when the weather was impossible and the original plan had completely fallen apart, Washington just pushed on. It makes you wonder, how often does the entire course of history hinge not on some grand, brilliant plan, but on the simple, stubborn refusal of one person to give up?